Okay, everyone, we're welcoming back Jane Eaglen. Jane, I think this is the third time we've had you with us. Whoa.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be a surprise.
No, technical difficulties today.
Yes. Let's see, we had you at an interview you did at the Miyako Hotel with Kip Cranna interviewing you, and we had this lovely setup there. I think that was before you sang a Turandot for us in San Francisco.
I think it was. I think that was 2005, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then we had you back again to make you an honorary member of our society. And you sang with, and I always get a tear in my eye when I have to say this, the wonderful young tenor who you work with so much, Gregory Carroll, and sadly he died soon after that. It was a very unfortunate loss for the opera world. And so this will be the third time you're here. And we're just absolutely joyous to have you here with us today. And we get to hear about your new project, which is kicking off just very shortly here. So I'll go ahead and make the ubiquitous introduction. And which I was working hard on today. So at 17, Jane Eaglen gave up the piano to study voice, and she attended the Royal Northern College of Music, where she was taken under the wing of tenor baritone Joseph Ward. And Joseph Ward was one of the people who became, who was schooled with Mike Tippett and Britten. He sang their roles in the early stages of those two gentlemen's career. And Ward heard in Eaglen's voice a tone that was Wagnerian. And he told her that she would sing Brünnhilde and Norma. And under his tutelage, her plush, and her middle was always as plush as could be, her voice grew out and up and down and in all directions. Luckily, Eaglen encountered Reginald Goodall, who all good Wagnerians know for his wonderful English language ring that he recorded. And he was engaged to sing Isolde's Liebestod, which Goodall conducted in celebratory events surrounding the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana, all at the ripe age of 21, was it, Jane?
It was a little, I think it was maybe 24 when I sang the Liebestod for Prince Charles. Okay.
In the United Kingdom, Jane Eaglen sang many small roles at the beginning of her career, the Princess in Rusalka, Berta in the Barber of Seville, and her first sensation was Sanzuzza in Cavalleria Rusticana, followed by roles in Mozart, Donna Anna, Fior di Ligi, and the fiendish Abigail in Verdi's Nabucco. Jane's U.S. debut was at the Boston Pops Esplanade Orchestra in the Hatch Memorial Shell on July 3rd and 4th in 1992, where she sang Brünnhilde's battle cry and brought down the house. The fireworks were Jane's 8 high B's and 4 high C's, and the crowd roared their approval. She ended the Pops with her own rendition of God Bless America, and that did it. Everybody was won over 100%. Jane's American opera debut was as a surprise in 1994 at Seattle Opera, when she stepped in at the last minute to sing Norma to great acclaim. And Spate was on board all the way through your career. Her next role was just a few weeks later as a last-minute replacement for Opera Pacific as Brünnhilde. Eaglen went on to become one of the great Wagnerian singers of the 1990s and the 2000 on the stages of the great opera houses all over the US and in Europe. And you segued into teaching first at University of Washington in Seattle, and later Baldwin Wallace College in Ohio, where you started a Wagner training program there. I think it's still going on. And then in 2013, she arrived at the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. Eaglen is also a regular coach for the San Francisco Opera's Marilla program. And this year marks the debut of the Boston Wagner Institute at the New England Conservatory of Music. So join me all in welcoming Jane Eaglen. Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much. And we really appreciate everybody's forbearance. You know, the best laid plans don't always work as we wished. So thank you for being with us today and being such a good sport through this log on process. So to start this conversation, I would like to hear about the aha moment when your teacher, Joseph Ward, heard Wagner in your voice. Why don't you tell us how that played itself out, if you could, please?
Sure. I mean, I'd sung a little bit, you know, in school and church and so on, but I really thought of myself as being a pianist. So I didn't really know anything about opera or, you know, art song or anything really until I went to college. So I started studying with Joseph Ward, and probably about 2 or 3 weeks after we'd started working together, I thought I still sounded like a boy soprano. I did for, you know, certainly a year, if not more. There was maybe a couple of notes in the middle of my voice that indicated something was going to develop, and that's what he heard. And so literally after about 3 weeks, he said, you know, one day you're going to sing Brünnhilde and Norma. My answer to that was, is that good? Because I didn't know these pieces and these operas. And so he said, yes, I think you're going to be very happy with those roles. And he suggested that I started off by listening to The Ring, because he knew that I came from a piano and sort of orchestral background. And so I think he thought that the orchestral side of Wagner would really appeal to me. So he told me to go to the library and to start listening to the Schulte Ring with Nielsen. And basically it changed my life. I think I did start with Valkyrie. He told me start with Valkyrie, you know, hear Brünnhilde and so on. And I just couldn't believe this music existed. And I was hooked from that moment on. So I, you know, came to Norma a little bit later, then listened to this. And I really had to learn all the repertoire at that point because I just didn't know any of it. So I spent hours and hours in the library at college just listening to operas and getting to know the repertoire, and with his instruction kind of, you know, leading me in the right direction as to what he thought that I would work on and what I should listen to. And seriously, just hearing Wagner for the first time was remarkable.
I know. I know exactly where you are. I had some musical training when I was a small child, actually playing the violin. And then my family moved, and there was no music program, and my parents had no money to buy me a violin and pay for lessons. So that was where I had to leave it at the wayside. And I always wished that I had been able to follow my initial enjoyment of music in that fashion. So, I mean, I'll go on to another question. It was when you were here with us in San Francisco singing what I was among the last of your Turandots. So tell me a little bit about that role, because that was another role you're noted for. It's a brutal role. It's very high, and then there's all sorts of baggage that comes along with that role.
Yes, it's true. I did my first Turandot in Seattle, as you mentioned, Spate Jenkins, and I, you know, did many things. I did my first Isolde there, of course, you know, I did a new ring cycle there, and actually did my first Turandot there. And it was a role I'd been asked to do for several years before I actually decided I would go for it. I knew it would be something that would be good for me. I can't honestly say I ever enjoyed singing it particularly. I mean, I enjoyed the actual singing part of it. What I found frustrating is that Turandot's such a very two-dimensional character. And, you know, I worked with some really great directors on the role and would say, you know, can you just give me something that's more interesting? And they're like, yeah, we'll try. And then they'd come back and say, yeah, there's just kind of nothing in the role. You know, it is what it is. And, you know, I always used to say, basically, Turandot is about standing, pointing, and singing loud. And that's basically, if you can point and sing loud, you're fine. And I certainly did a lot of them over a fairly short period of time. And, felt very comfortable doing so. I was always happy at that point in my career sitting up high and, never had a problem. It is a little daunting sometimes that, you don't come on until halfway through the opera. And of course, the scene before is literally 300 people saying, hey, she's coming. And then you just get this chord and you're into the aria. So I got used to doing it, and I enjoyed the singing up to a point, but it was just never my favorite role. I mean, I've been so lucky to have been spoiled by some of the great women that I've been able to sing, like Brünnhilde and Isolde and Norma and Donna Anna to some extent. So compared to those, Turandot is very much a one-dimensional almost character. But, I had fun doing it, and I was very lucky to be able to sing it with Pavarotti at the Met, which was a great experience. And, it was very nice to sing the third act duet with him. That was fun. So it was definitely a role that was important in my career. But in fact, the San Francisco ones were the last ones. And I was quite happy to say, okay, she's done. I'm done with her now.
I remember your comment was that headdress, the headdress, you'd been poked in the head so many times by so many costumes, dressers, and so on. And that had to be hellish to have to wear that big thing on your head all the time.
Yeah, the costumes in general were not comfortable. The Met production, which is the famous Zeffirelli, which they still do, in fact, I believe that the blue first costume that she wears weighs 60 pounds. I mean, it would take two dressers to sort of put it on you. And the headdress, because it had to come off at one point, couldn't be pinned on. So it had to just kind of sit there, and you had to sing the aria hoping that it wasn't going to come off. I think with some Turandot, at some point, it did fall off, and there were beads flying everywhere all over the stage, which couldn't have been very good. But it was definitely not a comfortable role. I never ever did a Turandot with a comfortable outfit, with either the dress, which usually had a huge train, and always some kind of headdress. It was not a comfortable role. It was probably just as well you didn't have to move around much and you could just point.
Yeah, Puccini did like some things ostentatious from time to time, and boy, that was it in spades.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, well, Spade-Jankus was one of your early and most steadfast supporters. He's also an honorary member of our society, and we've had him come talk to us. Tell me about you and your career relationship with Spade, because he's such a great guy, and we always enjoyed having him. He must have been fun to work with. How was that?
Absolutely, quite a character. I mean, I didn't know Spate, obviously, before I first went to Seattle. And the story of me first going to Seattle to replace a soprano who got sick in the Norma, I was singing Norma in Austria, I believe, in Graz in Austria. And I had a phone call from my agent saying, Seattle have lost their Norma. Do you want to go do it if they'll take you? And I was like, sure. It would basically have meant going home for one day, packing my cases, flying straight out again. And Spate had never heard me at this point, and he always likes to know who he's hiring and so on.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a couple of people had told him that they'd heard me sing it with Scottish Opera, which was the first time I'd done the role. And somebody he trusted, I think an agent, had said, she really can sing this. You should hire her. But he wasn't quite convinced. And so there was somebody else he was thinking of, and their agent said, well, what we'll do is we'll get her on the phone and she can sing Casta Diva down the phone to you and you can see if you like it. But she turned her cell phone off, and so he didn't get to hear her. And my agent said, she has to come immediately. If she's going to come, you have to tell her. So he basically made the decision because the other soprano, whoever she was, didn't have her cell phone switched on. So kind of my American career, which started there, was one of those strange incidents, and that's what happened. So I flew in to Seattle on a Sunday. They met me immediately, and sort of Spate met me at the airport with flowers, which I thought was lovely. On the drive to my hotel, he told me the entire staging, everything that was going to happen, every lighting change. And, once I got to know him, I realized that wasn't unusual. I thought that was a little strange, but it actually wasn't with Spate. He was so hands-on and wanted to be part of everything. Yeah. So I went in the next day and I'd sort of said, I'm kind of tired. I've just flown from Europe and blah, blah, blah. But at 10 o'clock in the morning, they were staging me with Casta Diva, and I realized that he was a little nervous. He didn't know who I was, and so I thought I'd better sing out, even though I didn't particularly feel like it. And I think he was happy, and it calmed his nerves as well. So it was a wonderful experience, and I had a great time there. And while I was there for that, Norma, he said to me, "Okay, I want you to do your first Isolde here." With Ben Hepner, and we'll plan it for a few years hence, but just don't do it anywhere else first. We'd like you to do it here first. And that's when he also talked about the Turandot in between, and also that he wanted to do a new ring cycle starting, I think, in 2000, that he would like me to be involved in too. And then when I was singing my first Isolde, I met my husband, which was something I never expected to happen when I was singing my first Isolde. So I ended up living in Seattle for 12 years. I also sang center there. I did, of all things, Rosalinda in Fledermaus, which was a huge lot of fun. So, I really had a great time and some wonderful experiences with Seattle Opera.
Yeah, well, when he goes in big. I mean, he had you there so often. You became a Seattle crowd favorite. Everybody just was chomping at the bit for the next role that you would take on for him. And also, didn't he commission an opera and with you in mind, the Amelia?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's done with me in mind. I think, it was like there's a role of a midwife of all things, which was actually what I ended up doing, which was, it was interesting. It was good to do that. But yeah, I think it was a story that he really wanted to tell. And Stephen Wadsworth, who also directed the ring cycle that I did there, it was something he was very involved in. He directed it as well. So it had a huge cast actually. And it was an interesting piece.
Yeah. My next question, and you've already touched on it a little bit, was that you met your husband Brian in Seattle, and I remember talking to you. I think going in or out of a restaurant or something, and saw the two of you, and that was a real wonderful moment, I'm sure, for you. Was he a fan? Was he an opera fan?
Absolutely. I mean, to this day, when I'm looking for repertoire for my students, I ask him, for suggestions. He knows so much about opera and the repertoire and so on. But yes, I actually did meet him at a CD signing for my first CD with Sony Classical. And, he's tall and cute, and I remembered him a year and a half later when I'd gone to start rehearsing the Tristan, and I was going to hear a friend of mine do a concert, and he came up to me and said, "Oh, I guess you're here to start rehearsing." And we had a conversation, and he told me that he'd got tickets for 9 of the 10 performances already. Yeah, because it was his favorite, Tristan and Norma, his favorite operas, and he wanted to share it with lots of his friends and family and so on. Of course, my reaction to that was, "Well, which one are you not coming to?" And which he replied, "Well, it's the one that's on the radio." So I said, "Oh, okay, I guess that's fine." And then he was a volunteer for the education department for Seattle Opera. So he was going to schools and telling them the story and so on. And so we had mutual friends, and we had dinner, and, the rest, as I say, is history. And we got married about 20 feet from where we had that first conversation, because we got married in the Seattle Opera House before it was done up as it is now. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, I can imagine. I didn't realize that, he was a real opera nut, and like all of us are here today.
Yeah.
We're all just, starving for opera, and it's been a real challenge for all of us who are usually on the go, to be tied up at home and trying to make do lists, watching it on these little boxes in our homes or on cell phones or whatever. It's been a difficult time for us, and we're all chomping at the bit to get on with life and get on with opera. So, was Brian able to help you with your career, or did he just let you, be Jane Eaglen and he just supported you, or did he have any?
He was always extremely supportive right from the start. He worked for Amazon when 22 people worked for Amazon, and he was packing books out of Jeff Bezos's garage with him. And basically in the first year, he hadn't ever taken any vacation. but he took all the vacation that was due to him in the first year. He was able to go. Just after we met, I opened the season at La Scala with Götterdämmerung, and he was able to come to that, and he was able to come and see things, and I would try and go to Seattle when I could. I think I didn't go back to England for something like 7 months or 8 months, in between things. So basically he decided that it's very nice of him, but he had to either sort of commit more to Amazon or decide not to. And he, as he sweetly says now, it wasn't really a difficult decision. And what was great was that he was able to travel with me then. So we were able to be together. He was able to help me, on the road with all the difficulties of traveling and sort of take some of those pressures off, which was really wonderful. And he also is a fluent Russian speaker. So a couple of concerts I did when I sang Russian, which I'd never done before, he was able to coach me, and that was fantastic. Just sitting watching television, I could suddenly say to him, so is that a back L or a forward L, and just kind of coach it there and then. So it was really great that we could be together, throughout the middle part of my career. That was when we met. I'd already, obviously, if I was singing my first Isolde, I'd had quite a substantial career before then, but from then on he was able to travel with me.
Oh goodness, I hear, because I know quite a few opera singers, and that life on the road can be really desolate for a lot of folks, and it is so wonderful that you married your biggest fan and were able to travel together and support one another and create a career together. That's really, really phenomenal. That's a gift, a big gift. So what made you decide that it was Das Ende, that you decided that you wanted to set it aside? Was there something specific that led you to that?
I don't think it's still Das Ende, actually. I mean, I don't consider myself retired. I'm actually singing at a former student's wedding next month. So I need to practice. But I still sing if I want to. I think had got to the point when I just didn't want to travel so much, and I didn't want to have the pressure of constantly being on the road and constantly having to sing, these big roles in big houses and so on. Because I did go to English National Opera when I was 23, so I'd been singing, professionally non-stop, which was fantastic. But since, from the age of 23, and I think it takes its toll after a while. So I just basically found that I wanted to kind of have a bit more stability. I wanted to be in one place a bit more. And I came to it gradually. As you say, I taught a bit at the University of Washington first, yes, while still, traveling quite a lot. But then I really did decide I just want to be in one place, and I want to maybe still perform a little bit if it's things I really want to do, but not so much. To be perfectly honest, I wanted to be in one place and get a dog. I wanted a dog my entire life, and finally I could get one.
Yeah, you see a lot of singers travel with their diva or divo dog that is their constant companion when they're traveling around, going from hotel to hotel or Airbnb to Airbnb, and that's it. They're little animals with them to keep them company if they don't have a partner or a spouse. So the life on the road isn't a whole lot of fun sometimes. It sounds like it's glamorous, but it's not all that.
I wanted a big dog too. Well, a bigger dog. I didn't want a little dog. I wanted a bigger one. I definitely didn't consider myself to have stopped at that point. But then when I went to Ohio, which was a really great place, it had lovely conservative music. It was all undergrad, but it was a great place to sort of get into the full-time teaching kind of thing, even though I did some performances and all around that time. But then, as I think a lot of people know, soon after I got there, I got a brain tumor. And so I had, brain surgery in Cleveland and so on, and everything was great. But that sort of definitely put me out of the singing for a little bit. And I did have a concert coming up soon after, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do it or not, because my muscles had kind of gone a little bit because my balance had gone. I hadn't been able to walk properly for a while. So I had to kind of build up, really kind of going back to the start. The difference was from being 18, I knew how to do it. So I still had to go through the process, and it took me a long time But I did actually, work for 6 months basically, and got back to the point that I needed to be to do the performance. And so, I was happy that I didn't let it sort of slide, because I think I could very easily at that point have said, okay, that is it, I'm not going to sing anymore. But I decided not to. I wanted to keep going, and I'm glad I did.
Well, we're glad you did too, because your contributions to the now up and coming, the people who are aspiring to be singers, and then that's also got to be a really difficult thing here, because there have been like no future engagements and so on to look forward to, or competitions. The virtual competitions and all of this has been wonderful because it kept people focused, but it is absolutely not the same as being there live and hearing the voice, because it vibrates the room, and everything about a vocal production is about hearing it live, and recordings sometimes can't capture the spin on a voice or the richness of tone and so on. But you're back teaching again. I presume that you're at New England Conservatory of Music. I remember when you were at Baldwin Wallace, and I think you sent us a couple of your students to put forward to give them grants for career study. And that was also wonderful there too. Now at New England Conservatory of Music, you're teaching there, and you have a new Wagner Institute, the Boston Wagner Institute at the New England Conservatory of Music. You're kicking that off in a couple weeks. Tell us about that.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm just about to start my 9th year at the New England Conservatory, which I can't believe it's been that long. But I've actually been teaching in person this whole year. NEC had a really wonderful protocol. We had 2 COVID tests a week. We were teaching most of the faculty chose not to come in and teach live. Most of the faculty have been doing Zoom, and I did some Zoom lessons. But I felt comfortable going in. We had lessons in big rooms. After 30 minutes, we would move to another big room, and then the rooms would have to have an hour to breathe in between them for the air to change. But it was actually worked really well, and I know the students were so happy to have in-person lessons, because everything else was on Zoom. And so to come in and sing to a real person in a real room was great, and I enjoyed it too. It was a much better way to teach. But you mentioned when I was at Baldwin Wallace, we started the Wagner Intensive there, which I don't believe is still continuing. But it was to sort of get together people that potentially might be able to sing Wagner, but to have them come and do smaller scenes, things that last 20 minutes instead of 5 hours, to see if this is the way they want to go. To sing with people that have similar voice types, because very often you can't find somebody else with a big voice to sing a duet with anyway. So to bring them together was really sort of the plan. And then when that stopped, I did have a couple of summers with Pittsburgh Festival Opera, where I did the Master Singers project for young dramatic voices, which was also a similar kind of thing, working with potentially big voices, doing scenes, which I staged and conducted actually, which was kind of fun. So that then might develop into something in the future, but I really wanted to start something myself, and being at NEC seemed to be the obvious place to do so. So it took a couple of years or even more to sort of get set up, and then we had auditions, and then of course COVID happened. So that didn't happen when it was supposed to. But what we are doing this year is we're having a week online. We have 12, I think, really wonderful singers. I've only heard maybe 4 of them live. So, we've done this all through recordings like everyone else has. But I think we have some really good singers. I have 5 sopranos, 4 mezzos, 3 tenors, and a baritone, which is great. Oh. Yeah, so I'm very excited about that. And because of obviously having to be on Zoom, we're just going to be working on arias. We have 2 great coaches, one from San Francisco, actually, Robert Molicone, who you may know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know him. Actually, right now he's in rehearsals for a production with an opera group that I am involved with. I'm on the board of West Edge Opera. Elizabeth Cree. He's conducting that right now. In fact, they're in rehearsals today.
Right.
And this is incredibly exciting that we're going to have live music this month in person.
Yes.
capacity outdoors.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's great. And I've been watching Bob conduct the rehearsals, and he's really amazing, really totally amazing.
So
So
he's a great pianist, great conductor, and I first met him at Merilla, because I've been coming to Merilla's for so many years, and so because we're hoping to be able to include a form of music making that NEC has worked really hard on called soundjack, which basically means that a pianist can be in their house and a singer can be up to 500 miles away in their house, and there's no time lag between the piano and the voice. So we're hoping to work that, which is why we wanted to have a West Coast coach, and we've also got an East Coast coach. So we're going to work on their arias and so on. And then at the end of the week, hopefully everyone's going to record one of their arias or a section of it, because I think everyone's tired of long Zoom concerts these days. So we're going to do hopefully a Wagner short and sweet and to the point concert with everybody having recorded their pieces and put together in a kind of, some kind of curated piece, which I hope will be interesting. And we've also got 3 wonderful masterclasses: Ben Heppner, Katharina Dalaiman, and Greer Grimsley.
Oh, goodness.
So that's kind of fun. Ben and Katharina was the original Brangainer in the Met production of the Tristan. And so it's sort of we're all joining back together again. And Greer, I've actually known since Scottish opera days in the late 80s.
Really?
When he was singing his first Johannahan in Salome, and I was singing Fiordiligi. And with Scottish Opera, we went on tour, and I got to know him a little bit then. And then, of course, we sang together a lot. And I sang Brünnhilde in his first ring, and we did Dutchman together, and know him very well. So I'm really excited that these people can come and give us a masterclass, even if it's just on Zoom. It's going to be great, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it too, because we try to find projects that are going to move Wagner forward into the next generations, and that's certainly one of them. They have to be trained and guided and in the right hands before they can take that on, or it can really send a career off the rails if they try to do that without really great teachers such as yourself. So as a teacher, how do you assess these voices and then direct them towards what will bring out the most of their capacities?
It depends very much on what level they are. I teach from freshmen right through to DMA students, and pass that to these people who are doing the Wagner, some of which are much older singers, as they should be coming into this repertoire. So it depends a lot. And I think one of the things I found with Wagner, or people that come and say, oh, I've been told I should sing Wagner and this is what I should do, it's often not necessarily that the voice really is right for Wagner. It's just that it hasn't been sort of directed in the right way. So if it's a voice that maybe doesn't move as well, or is a little bigger than normal, that doesn't necessarily mean it's right for the real dramatic repertoire. So what I try to do is work with the voice and see where it's going, work on bel canto repertoire. That's always my sort of go-to. Let's do some bel canto first. And by the way, Bellini was Wagner's favorite composer. And so then people go, oh, that's interesting. So I just try to develop, and the most important thing to me with any student is that they develop what is their instrument and sound like themselves. I really don't encourage young singers to listen to recordings very much, because I think they try to pick up what that singer does. That's okay when you've learned something and you can really kind of, okay, I'll tweak it a little bit and just see about how phrasing and so on. But too many singers have good ears, which is great for the singing, but not so great when they're thinking that they're trying to do an impression, in a sense, of somebody else, which is never going to be good. So it's always about developing the voice that's their voice. And that's something that I learned from Joseph Ward. My only voice teacher, as you know. And so teaching was always something that I really wanted to do. It wasn't sort of like, well, I guess when I don't sing so much, I'll teach. It was always part of my plan, because I learned so much from him. And then, with the career that I've had, and standing next to Domingo or Pavarotti or James Morris or whatever, you learn a lot of things from that. And those are all things that I wanted to pass on. So that's what I'm hoping to do. And, with the Wagner, I'm just so passionate about the music and how beautiful it is and how beautifully it should be sung, that's what I try to, convey to the people that I work with on the Wagner.
I will never, ever in my life, the pinnacle of my Wagnerian life was that magnificent Tristan up there in Seattle. That was absolutely magic. It was beautiful. There were so many of the Wagner Society members that were there. What was it like being in, I think it was possibly really dangerous, for one thing, that with the flames coming up there during the Liebestod, and Michel de Young on top of what looked like one of those little snow globes up there singing the watch Liebes, whatever, what is her, Brangena's watch?
Yeah, Brangena's roof, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the most, how was that for you? I mean, it had to be just electrifying to have been singing that. It was just gorgeous beyond belief.
It was a very, very special time. And, I'd worked for 2 years, I think, on the role, pretty much. And so, I was ready to kind of get there and do it. We had a pretty long rehearsal period, which was great. And also Ben and I were both new to the role. So it was kind of interesting for us both to go through that process and learn it at the same time. I think also it was a really interesting production and part of that was Spate's sort of belief with Wagner is that there should be a visual change every 20 minutes. Otherwise the audience don't kind of, they kind of tune out a little bit. And so there are lots of things happening with lighting or, bits of set moves and so on. So it kept it very interesting, which I think was great. And, some beautiful colors in it and so on. And Spate was famous for having flames, and when he told us actually the flames were in the love duet, so as the passion kind of increased, the flames came up either side of this kind of box. And it was fine. We were a long way away from it. Just one night, somebody pushed the switch too far, and the flames virtually shot up to the ceiling. And that was like, oh, what's going on here? Well, it was a little warm, but we were a long way away from it. It was actually fine. So it was a really great production to do, I think, for the first time, and just having that amount of time to work on it was great too. And we were sort of aware that the opera world was waiting for this in some sense. There was definitely that kind of feeling. But honestly, I think I was too busy meeting my husband. It never really occurred to me. And I think, it was like, this was something which was very special, the whole production, everything, very exciting. But I think it was only afterwards as I realized how much the opera world had been building up to this. And hopefully we didn't disappoint.
Oh, no, far from it. And I know that there was interest from other opera houses for it, but the whole flames thing and the stage splitting apart and all of that stuff, that was a tremendous technological production. I mean, rings are rings. Yes, they're huge, but that stage split apart and you were on that little Isolde's, island, and Tristan and Isolde, they really were in this little world of their own, and it was just absolutely spectacular.
We did do the same production in Chicago a little after.
They did do it there? Oh, okay.
They did in Chicago. I think they did it without flames, because I know in Chicago they're not allowed to. I think they had a fire there at some point in the past. I
heard something about a fire in Chicago.
So they're not allowed flames on the stage there. But that was actually the only time there was a technical issue, which was in a rehearsal, thank goodness, and the stage split apart and couldn't come back together again. And there was actually no way for Ben and myself to get off the stage until the set came in. So I think we were sitting there for 2 hours, discussing, I don't even know what, but all kinds of things. It was one of the longest conversations we had. And I don't think it was about Tristan and Isolde, but we were about something. But it took about 2 hours to fix. And it was good that it didn't happen in a performance. It was just in a rehearsal.
Yeah, you would have needed somebody to parachute in some snacks or something while you were sitting there watching.
We would get to that point.
Oh, goodness. Wow. These are the things we never hear about. Let's see. I'm kind of running. I'm down at the end of the questions that I had for you. Where do you see things going? I mean, do you think we can, with a little bit of time, recover from this drastic pause? I mean, I think a lot of people were trying to figure out whether they really could go on singing anymore with this interruption in income and contracts gone, and when are they going to be able to get back to work? What's the mindset of the singers right now?
I mean, I think, most people are very optimistic and happy that things are starting to get back to happening for real. I just think that, it's such a wonderful art form. And I think that people that love opera love voices. They love that sort of visceral reaction you get from hearing a real voice live and, not mic'd. It kind of affects your bones even. And that's something that isn't going to go away. And people are always going to love to have that. And I just think that we might have to be patient for a little while. It might just take a little while to get back fully into the flow of things. Mm-hmm. But opera survived a long time because people love it, and it's great. And I think that, I've always said this, I don't come from a musical family. None of my friends or family had ever seen opera. They all came and saw something because I was in it and went, oh, this is actually really good. We really like this. So I think you just have to be honest and say to them, this is a really great thing. And I know that for singers, it's difficult to sort of get back into the swing of things a little bit, and, jobs are small. And what we're saying to our students a lot of the time is go out and find the opportunities to perform, put together a recital and go and sing it in the park or do whatever. I know some of our singers have been actually rehearsing in Boston Commons because they couldn't sing in their apartments during the day. So when they were allowed out, they would just go and sing in a field somewhere. And so, they just need to go and find the opportunities. And many of the young singers, the students and so on that we have, are doing exactly that. And that is really a great way forward, I think. But I'm always optimistic, and I think it's too great for it not to carry on. And I'm going to certainly do my part to make sure that Wagner carries on and that we find the next generation of the great singers for this. And, it just keeps perpetuating and getting better and better.
Yeah, speaking of which, we're now participating, we have been for a number of years, in the Bayreuth Festival has a Stipendiat Stiftung, and we're sending our third stipendiat this year. He's a coach accompanist, and he's very excited about going there and being there. And so that's something that tells you that there still is the urge to get out there and do Wagner. For us. So I wanted, we had a little segue, and since you've already touched on the subject that this is about, Emma and I wanted to share a little bit of Jane singing, and since she's already introduced the story that surrounds it a little bit, we're going to go ahead and play a little music, and you'll just have to forgive us, Jane, for a second. So hit it, Emma. She's queuing up the clip right now.
Yeah, give me a moment, okay? I'll be there.
Okay, here we get to hear the person behind the screen there, Emma.
Yeah. Okay.
We're so flabbergasted by having this little incident about getting started on time.
Okay, hold.
So, and then as soon as this little clip is over, we'll go ahead and open up the Q&A. So I know there's some people that already have a couple questions out there. We can open up your mic, folks, if you would like to ask Jane yourself. So I'm going to try and do that. I'm not as good on this sort of thing. So if you have a Q&A for Jane, as time permits, I will open up your mic, and then you'll need to open up yours to ask her the question, okay? We're waiting still for this little bit of music. Is it coming? We're having a bad technical day today. At least we still have power. Okay, here we go. Absolutely lovely, Jane. And I know a lot of singers don't like to hear their own voice. Could you share your little story that I read in one of the little pieces of you about your little dream aha moment when you were undergoing your treatment?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you really couldn't make this up, honestly, but
No.
yeah. So as I just mentioned, I had brain surgery when I was in Cleveland, and I had 8 hours of brain surgery, and after waiting a couple of hours in recovery, I was then taken to ICU. And so I got to ICU about midnight, and 2 nurses came in, and I was feeling pretty good. I was fairly, chatty and whatever. And so they put me in the bed, and these 2 nurses began to sort of make me comfortable. They changed your gown, all that kind of stuff. So it was very quick after I'd arrived in the room. And they said, well, what do you do? And I don't usually like to sort of say very much, but I thought, well, I'm going to be here for a bit. So I said, well, actually, I'm a singer. And they said, oh, do you sing around here? And I said, no, not really. I'm a classical singer. I sing opera. I sing all over the world. And again, not to sort of, it wasn't to boast, but just to sort of put it into context, so that they knew I really was a singer. I said, well, actually, I have a Grammy, which was something they could sort of understand. Oh, my goodness, so you really do sing, they said. And I said, yes, I really do. And then one of them said, my favorite song ever is an opera song. You won't know it, but it's just the most beautiful song. And I listen to it literally every night. It's what I listen to before I go to sleep. I listen to it also during the day. It's just my absolute favorite song, and it's from a movie called Sense and Sensibility. And in my mind, I actually thought, maybe I'm still under the anesthetic here. Maybe I'm just kind of asleep and this isn't really happening. And I said, yeah, I do know that song, actually. In fact, it's me singing it. And of course, they stopped what they were doing, looked so totally shocked. And I think also thought, yeah, she's just had brain surgery. She doesn't know what she's saying. And so they were a little bit like, oh, okay, wow, that's really you. I said, yeah, it really is. They finished what they were doing, went out, and obviously went to the computer and checked, and came back 2 minutes later and were like, oh my goodness, it really is you. This is just too amazing. So it was a very, very strange experience that happened. And as I say, you couldn't make that story up. It was just incredible, but very sweet.
No, you couldn't. But yeah, it was so moving, and I didn't know whether it was something I should bring up. And since you brought it up, I thought, okay, it's fair game now. And thank you for sharing it, because I remember seeing the movie and watching the credits at the end, and I'm listening to that. I go, Jane Eaglen. And I waited until it got down far enough, and then I could see, yeah, you're right. Your ears are good. That really was you singing, and it was such a lovely movie. And then at the end, to hear you singing over the credits was really special as well.
Yeah, I love the movie. It's a beautiful movie. And in fact, it was when I was with Sony Classical, and it was a Sony movie, and they called me literally 2 days before the recording session, would I do it? And when I turned up at the recording session, Patrick Doyle, who wrote the music, who wrote a lot of music for Emma Thompson and Kenneth Branagh's movies as well, was actually rewriting it. So the last page of that song was given to me sort of 5 minutes before I had to record it. And there was another song too, which is on the CD, which isn't used in the movie, but uses the same music. And Emma Thompson came because she'd written the script, and for which she won an Oscar, in fact. So she came to be part of it, and Ang Lee, the director, kind of directed me in a way. This is why we want a voice like yours to sing it, because Kate Winslet's character sings it in the movie, and really sort of made me feel that I was part of it, rather than just recording a song that didn't have any relevance to anything. It was actually really a wonderful experience, a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's really, really lovely, and it's just so beautiful, very, very beautiful. Well, I'm going to ask Emma if she would put. I'll do first our landing slides, because I want to make a big announcement to our members, and then we'll go to Q&A. So don't leave if you have a question for Jane or want to hear. Stay tuned for some more Wagnerian insights. We will have Emma put up our slide for our fall. Our fall announcements that we have here. We're really excited about. We're going to take our Bayreuth break, because we usually take. Okay, there it is, folks. Save the date. The Cosima party is on. We are going to have our Cosima party this year on Sunday, December 12th at the Marines Memorial Club and Hotel and Crystal Lounge. Remember, you sang there, but you were in the ballroom, Jane, when we had big group of people there. It's a lovely place. In fact, I think we even housed you there at, in the hotel itself.
Yes.
So the champagne will be flowing. I'm going to be uncorking some of my family's red wine, and we're going to have a lovely, lovely time. So I want everybody to mark that on their calendar right now. And so then we'll see you there. And then we have our next 3 programs that will be coming in the fall after our Bayreuth break. We'll have director Paul Curran back on September 11th. And I don't have dates yet for Professor Gundula Kreutzer of Yale University is going to speak in October about moving from Wagner's time to the modern age in technical lights, smoke and mirrors. She's going to use Wagner's original flat sets and segue to Francesca Zambella's magnificent ring that was performed here in San Francisco. And then we have Will Berger in November. And then, of course, as you just saw, we'll have our oh, wait, these are 2021. It says 2020 up at the top, but we know what year we're in. And William Berger will close these out. These will all be Zoom webinars, folks. We aren't ready to go back to having meetings yet. I'm working with venues to try and find times going into the next year. So we'll have to do Zoom for the rest of the year, but the Cosima party live and in color. So if we can go to our back to the screen, Emma, please. Thank you for those slides. And I'll take some Q&A and I will call on somebody and let's see. Okay. I can put someone on live if you'd like to. I'm going to call on Renata Cafiu. You can answer that question live. You can turn on your mic, Renata, if you wish. Okay.
I can see the questions in chat, and I can see the Q&A, so I can just answer them.
Okay, you can just go ahead and do that. I was going to open someone's mic, but apparently they don't want to open their mic. Okay, go ahead and answer then.
Okay, that's fine. So this is Renata. Will Jordan Hall be open for concerts this fall? I believe so. I mean, everything at NEC, like most places, is still very much up in the air. We're planning on everything being live and in person. And I think that there's going to be concerts, but I don't think it's yet been confirmed. But that's certainly my understanding. So fingers crossed we can actually all be there in person and have live music in Jordan Hall, which is such a beautiful hall if you don't know it, but it's a wonderful hall. Should I go down? I'll just go down.
Just go ahead and read them. I usually read them. I read them to the folks, but you're such a seasoned Zoomer that
I have my moments. So Kirk,
today.
Kirk asking, other than Seattle, what's my favorite opera house to sing in? That's a tricky one. I always really enjoyed singing at the Met, to be honest. It has a really lovely acoustic, and I always felt there that you could sing as quietly as you needed, despite the fact it's such a huge hall. It just really had a wonderful acoustic there. Personally, I would always find the European houses a little less easy to sing in, just because they tend to be smaller. And I would sort of get a little intimidated sometimes, particularly early on, when, you know, a marble and wood 1,500 seat theatre is beautiful, but my voice is a little bit big for it. So I would feel more intimidated by smaller houses than bigger ones. But I enjoyed seeing it at La Scala, of course, who wouldn't? Although I think it's been changed now, but there were still pockets of places on the stage that weren't as good acoustically. And Riccardo Muti famously, and he absolutely did this, if you were singing a long bit or whatever, and I did the ring with him at La Scala, he would be conducting, but then his other hand would be telling you to move over, go and stand there, and then he'd stop and say, right, that's the place to be. I think it must have been horrendous being a director there, because, you know, he would just, no, move over there, because that's the spot to sing. So he knew where all the good places were on stage. But if I had to pick one, it probably would be the Met. Or how in Boston can we find out more about Wagner Institute activities? Well, you can go to necmusic.edu and search for Wagner, and the program will come up. But what we are going to do is we're going to open the 3 master classes. Plus, hopefully, we're having a lecture from wonderful musicologist Helen Greenwald, who's on the faculty at NEC, who's going to talk about Wagner's the things that make Wagner difficult these days to sometimes deal with the Jewish aspect and so on. Wagner today, how people respond to him and so on. She's giving a lecture on that, and we're going to be opening those to you, and we hope you'll all come and see as many of those as you possibly can. So once we have the links for that, I'm going to send them all to Terry, who will send them to the members.
I'll get them out to everybody. Yes,
that's great, because we really want to, and we'll be advertising it on Facebook as well, I think, and hope that people will come to as many of those things as possible. Then when we have our actual concert together, we will announce when that's going to be, and we'll have it up to watch on YouTube, but we are going to have like a premiere, so that if you can come and sit at the premiere, I'll be on there as well. We can chat while it's going on and make it hopefully a bit of an event. You can have a drink in one hand and type questions in the other. But you will definitely get all the details that you need as soon as we have it all set up. So that's hopefully coming soon. And thank you for asking. Let's see. Oh, yes. Did I have an opportunity to work with Reginald Goodall? I did. As we mentioned a little bit, it was when I was quite young. I actually sang the Liebestod with him twice. One was at English National Opera in a concert there, and one was for Prince Charles and Princess Diana, I think a few years after they'd been married, and it was a gala concert for something in London, and Reginald Goodall only conducted the Liebestod. The rest of the concert was other conductors and so on. And I went to rehearse with him. He famously had his own studio at Covent Garden, at the very top back of Covent Garden, like in what we call the gods, the top layer of seats. And he had a room there which had been a gentleman's bathroom. And this was famous, and it was still had all the tiles and everything. So it was a wonderful place to sing because it was extremely resonant. And I believe I was 23, 24 or so, and I could sing the Liebestod. It was fine. I mean, the voice wasn't as it was going to be in another 10 years or whatever. But I never forget that when I got to the big climax in Des Welt and the big high G on Welt, he stopped me, and he famously never knew anyone's name. So he put his hand up and he said, "Miss Isolde, dear." And he looked at his music and he said, "You know, it's only marked with 2 Fs. It's only double forte." And that was really such a huge lesson for me that I took through my whole career, really, because Wagner actually never wrote more than 2 Fs for the voice. He occasionally wrote 3 for the orchestra, but never for the voice. And if he was telling me at 24 that I was singing too loud, that was a very key moment of instruction, if you like. And so the one thing I always say to Wagner singers when I start working in them, if you take nothing away from this, just remember one thing: Wagner is not loud. If you have the voice for it, you have the voice. If you don't, you can't make your voice the right one for it. You can't get to Wagner by pushing. You either can do it or not. And that was definitely something that I learned from him. And it was really wonderful. I mean, he generally conducted slow, but he had such intensity and knew the music so well that you never felt it was slow. It was always had such great direction. And that's the one thing I remember about him. You couldn't really see where his beat was. His beat was kind of this. And there's a famous story of him conducting Tristan at Welsh National Opera and starting the prelude of the opera. And you may know this story. It's a fairly famous story. And he started like this. And he turned to the leader of the orchestra and he said, "I have started." And so the leader had to kind of da 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 to kind of give the upbeat to that, and that. But the intensity was amazing, and so I loved working with him. It was great. And he also was in. I come from Lincoln in England, which is a city in the sort of East Midlands with the most wonderful cathedral in the country, without question. And he was a choir boy at that very cathedral. So we had a little bit of history there, which was very nice. Okay, I'll go through. Oh, Gamaliel. Did I enjoy working with Mr. Barenboim in Tannhäuser and Fliegende Holländer? Yes, I mean, Danny, as he's well known, is a wonderful conductor and a really interesting and kind of fun guy. You mentioned a little earlier about recording and how sometimes voices don't come across as they should, and that's certainly an issue for bigger voices. Bigger voices recording is always hard, and the people with the biggest recording careers have a much more sort of contained voice. I always think of a big voice as having kind of colors around it and kind of width to the sound, whereas a smaller voice is much more direct and goes straight into a microphone, so it records easier. And certainly on the Fliegende Holländer, which was the first of the two that we did, I've only listened to a bit of it, and I don't think it sounds like me at all. And my husband was there when I recorded some of it, and he listened to it, and he said if he hadn't been there, he would have thought it was someone else singing. However, when it got to the Tannhäuser, I think they'd worked out a little more of the technical issues, and the Tannhäuser, I think, is, again, I haven't listened to it. I've listened to bits of it maybe, but it did win a Grammy, so I suppose it was fine.
Well, they're picky people. They don't just hand them out for fun.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And you're judged by your peers, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely. I believe so. Yeah. No, it was very, very nice, and it was nice that a Wagner opera won a Grammy. I'm all for that. But it is difficult for bigger voices to record properly, and I kind of tried to try different ways of recording throughout the recording career I had, and sometimes it was successful. I sort of got to the point when it was like, just don't sing loud. I shouldn't really ever sing loud on a recording, and then it does it better. So Kirk has said, I heard a singer in Cleveland Orchestra Chorus say it was easier to sing in German than English. What is your view? I think so, yes, actually. I mean, never having really thought about it before. I mean, most singers are taught to start in Italian because that's an easier language to sing in, because the vowels are purer and there's less of them. There's 7 Italian vowels. There's something like 20-something English ones, if you don't count the diphthongs that I have from Northern England and so on. So I think German has a bad reputation in a way because people see it as a very percussive language, and so they think that the consonants have to be very strict and strong and so on. I don't think that's true. I think you should sing German like Italian. And obviously I've done a lot of both, but I love singing German. And I love the colors of the vowels, and I just love the color of the language anyway. But English, I think, is a very difficult language to sing in, partly because there's so many different versions of it, and because it's our natural language, we're more aware of those. I mean, when I first went to English National Opera, I had to learn how to sing in English because I come from the north. So I say Bath and Castle, but proper English is Bath and Castle. So, I had to learn to be posh, as we call it in England. And so it's much more complicated. And I find, with now teaching in America, that having that option of a or an o vowel is something that all English people know about, even if they don't use it, but Americans don't. So there are certain German words like Lust and Brust, which are very hard for a lot of American singers to say, because there's nothing really sort of equivalent to that in the language. But I love singing in German. I love the language, and I love the music. And Italian too. French, I find also quite difficult to sing in. It's much more sort of back in the throat, and sometimes, but with some singers it works really well. Just not my favorite, but some it is. Some people it is.
Well, I'm a omnivore when it comes to opera, and I like it all. People think I only like Wagner, and that would not be the case, because I cut my teeth on Italian opera and then ventured in on a dare to go to a Wagner opera, and on a dare to go up and see the prior iteration of the Seattle Ring, which I have back here.
Yeah.
My little piece of the curtain here from that. When they disposed of it, they asked for donations, and you could buy a piece of the Rhine. So I have that here.
Right.
I should put it up as an auction item at the Cosima party. I can't tell you how exciting it is that we're going to be able to do that, because everybody's just dying. They've been asking and asking and asking, and we didn't know if it was going to be possible. And I'm actually working to try and get some lecture dates in 2022 already. As we speak, we're trying to get that organized. So it's coming, folks. Do we have anybody else that has any more question, or you just want to say hello to Jane? I know there's a lot of longtime supporters and fans out there in our group today. I don't see anybody else. Let's see. Such a privilege. Oh yeah, I know. Kirk, you're always so wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do hope you're talking of performance.
Raise a hand. The hand raise. Could you use, if you have a question, don't raise hands. Could you please kindly type it in Q&A, if you would, please. Those of you who've raised your hands, kindly type it in Q&A. And there they are. They're up.
Okay.
That's a thank you from Brad Wade. Thank you, Brad, for hanging in while we got this show on the road.
And hello, Dahlia. Nice to see another Boston person here.
Yeah.
I am hoping, just talking of performance, that next year we're going to be having our Boston Wagner Institute with performances. And so I know Boston to San Francisco isn't just a little hop and a skip, but, you know, I'm hoping that maybe somebody as part of a trip might want to come and see our performances and see the scenes that we're going to do with the next generation of Wagner singers. It's very exciting, I must say.
I know it is really delightful to see young kids singing, and you know, the guidance you give them is invaluable. I'm sure that they appreciate it as much as we like seeing them develop their voices. Emma, are you going to ask a question, Emma?
I noticed we have 2 raised hands from attendees. It is Stephen Dibner and Bernice, if they still have questions.
Bernice Lindstrom's with us.
Bernice, hi.
Bernice, I can go in and open your microphone. Hang on just a second while I do that. You're allowed to talk. Okay, Bernice, you can unmute yourself. Oh.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Bernice.
Jane, thank you so much for doing this, because it was so great to see you. What was that, 2 years ago at Renee Tatum's wedding?
Yes, that's right.
And you know she has a baby.
I did not.
Parker James Schneider was just born, I think, a few days ago. I get confused so easily.
Oh my gosh. I've been in touch with Renee for a while. I'm sure a lot of you know Renee from Merrill too as well. And last time Bernice and I saw each other was at her wedding. Yes. So, wow, how wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's always so great to listen to you talk and sing, both.
Oh, thank you. My absolute pleasure. You know, San Francisco is a very special place for me. It was, you know, I've done lots of performances there, but my connection with Merrill has always been so special. And, you know, I really have missed it the last couple of years and hope that next year, you know, I'll be able to come back. But I think it's been 17 years that I've been coming to work with Merrill people. So, you know, that's where I first met Renee, but I've seen, you know, people come through the program and now having wonderful careers and so on. And just, they're always such a really great group of singers. It's really extraordinary what great singers they get. And you know, I hope to keep my connection to Merrill for a long time to come, because it's very special to me.
You're a draw for a lot of the singers. That's why they apply to be part of Merrill's, because they know they might be able to have some classes and tutoring with you. So Bernice, you can go ahead and close it down your microphone if you don't have any more questions.
Jane, we have a profusion of thanks and all kinds of great words to you. And thank you for your generosity, and thank you for singing, and thank you for setting a standard. Everybody is excited to see you on Zoom.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be able to do this. And I want to extend my thanks back to you too for your support of BWI. I really do appreciate that. It means that we can get these wonderful people to do our masterclasses. And I just hope that it's going to keep growing and become, a real sort of mecca for Wagner singers to come and have a couple of weeks with us and just learn their craft a little bit that way and try things out, which is really important, I think. So thank you all so much for your help and support, and I look forward to seeing you in our masterclasses. And
please feel free. We do have our grant fund. We've sent people, some assistance to help them go on with their Wagner careers, and like the stipendiate program, we're sending a young coach accompanist over there to learn and make vital career contacts that would maybe not always be possible, but he'll be there with other coach accompanist conductors. He'll get to meet some of the conductors there in Bayreuth. It's a huge, huge thing. And if you look at the pantheon of Wagner singers and the musicians and so on there, a lot of them got the opportunity to go to Bayreuth. I think Bryn Terfel went as a stipendiate. Other people, I'm blanking on names right now, but famous people that now have big careers have gone there as students. So keep sending us your likely candidates. We'll try and assist them with some financial help to get them to an audition or whatever. That's one of the things that our society is solidly behind. And that program was established by Kurt Herbert Adler. So
well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yes. Because they need that help. Sometimes you just go and do it, as you say. It's so important. And thank you for that.
I think you worked with Isaiah Savage in Washington. Yes. He came to us because he needed money to fly to Washington, D.C. And he said, and I don't have a good suit to wear. Could you help me? So voila, there's somebody who had a real serious need, and it made all the difference in the world to get him there and get him in front of people who could further his career. So I might be sounding like an evangelical Wagnerian here, but it's true. It's true. We can make a difference.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, there was a huge talent. Yeah, I think he sang in my masterclass actually when I was at Maryland, as well as working with him, in a lesson situation. But it's such a wonderful, wonderful instrument and a lovely guy.
Update. He's singing Tannhäuser in Los Angeles this fall. So it's around October. So folks, get your tickets. And I'm not remembering the rest of the cast. I didn't commit it to memory, but I'm gonna fly down there for his Tannhäuser.
Wonderful.
So I'll let you know.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay. It looks like the Q&A is kind of completed, folks. So thank you for attending. We'll see you at the next webinar. We'll see you at the Cosima party. And thank you. So bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Again.